Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie, and this one's all about the Accurascale Class 37 and the problems I've had. I'm getting quite a few comments, people saying, Charlie, you haven't done a review of the Class 37 yet. And to be perfectly honest, there's dozens of reviews out there, and in general terms, it's a well received. It is an exceptional model with loads of detail, so on. But there have been snags, and I have suffered with a couple of them. So let's go back, let's turn the clock right back to where it kind of all started. Well, to me, it started with an announcement. This is British Railway Modelling magazine back in March 2020 when they advertised they were going to produce a Class 37/0 green with full yellow ends split head code. Just what I wanted. So a little bit later, in January 21, I paid my £30 deposit, thinking, great. Now, as luck would have it, or not, the green with full yellow end split head code was, I believe it's the last Class 37 to be released. And you think to yourself, well, it's pretty naff, innit? I'm having to wait years for a loco. But, excuse me, looking on the positive side, any problems with the earlier versions will be ironed out by the time I get mine. So, could be a win after all. However, on round about the 9th of November, my first Accurascale 37 arrived. I pulled it out of the box, gave it a look over, and it looks absolutely lovely. There's no question about that, but that's not the sort of the point of the video, really. I plonked it on the track, turned up the power on and all the rest of it, and the sound was cutting in and out. I wasn't filming at the time, I'm afraid. The sound would go in, come off, and so on and so forth, but whatever. Anyway, what it appeared to do, it didn't like to go around bends. Excuse the state of this video, it's just off a mobile phone. This is what I sent to Accurascale. Brand new Accurascale Class 37, speed step 25 on Digitrax, going into a reasonably gentle curve. If I had to guess, it would be sort of radius 6, if such a thing existed. And stops for no apparent reason. If I then put the speed controller back to 0 and then start it up again, off it goes. I have 2 Helix and it certainly won't manage to go down there. It seems to be curve related. Now, what appeared to me to be the problem was, as soon as it went into a curve, it just seemed to cut out. I don't know whether it's a pickup issue or a stay alive issue or a decoder, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't care either, because I wasn't going to take apart this brand new loco and try and fix it. It was just a case of it went into the curve and it didn't work. A little later, after I'd finished the video, I then tried to get it around, go around the Helix. It would sort of go down the hill into the Helix and then just stop. So at the end of the day, it was just a case of boxing it up and sending it back. But before I did that, I did have another look around it, and obviously you can see here part of the head code panel isn't secure properly, and also looking at the bottom of it, there's oil at one end on one of the ends of the bogies. Again, unacceptable. So I packaged it up and sent it off to Accurascale. Now, as you'd expect, a few weeks passed, and then a very large parcel was once more on the doorstep. So I opened it up. And I can't guarantee that it was the previous model. I'm not too sure it was. I mean, it didn't have the oil stains. It didn't have the loose head code retaining plate on there. I'm pretty sure it was actually this is actually a different model. Anyway, it was time to unbox it. Checked it all over. Looked all perfectly, fine, and all the details there. No damage whatsoever. Just a perfect looking, lovely Class 37. So there we go. Right, pop it on the tracks and let's give it a test. All sounds good. Quick blast of the horn. Lovely. Beautiful. Now I've got it on the on the upline, so it will run down into the helix on the inner circuit. The inner circuit is third radius curve. So we'll send it off, stop it just after the viaduct, and then reposition the camera. So we're going to go up out on speed step 50. And I believe we've got a wheel off. And it's going all clunky, I can hear it. And the front wheel's off. So how about turning left on a single slip? Marvellous. Now perhaps I was being a little unkind there, because the Class 37, the front axle of the front bogie had actually derailed on the point in front of that single slip. So we obviously hit the single slip, having already derailed, and then obviously fell on its side. It doesn't detract from the fact that he derailed on the single slip anyway. Now, I had naturally checked all the back-to-backs, and back-to-backs in my mind should be around about 14.4, 14.5 for standard sort of 00 code 100 pico track. It seems to sort of be the sweet spot, let's say. I checked these with a set of digital calipers, and they all seemed well. I then got onto Accurascale, told them the issues that I had, and they said, "Okay, Charlie, we'll have it back. We'll take a look at it, and we'll let you know what's going on." Beautiful. Anyway, boxed it all up, off to the shop, posted it back, and then it returned here on December the 24th, just in time for Christmas. So here we have the little beastie. It's back, and it is the same one that I sent to them. And the first thing I want to do with it now is check the back-to-backs to see what configuration they have set them to. So with my vernier caliper, we have 14.52, 14.51, 14.53, 14.43, 14.5, 14.48. Now with my DCC Concepts 14.5 gauge, then if I just run through these, so that should be, yep, that's snug, 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 tight, snug, loose. Seems a bit loose, that one. Let me check that again. Yep, 14.55, so it is a little bit on the loose side. But they are, let's say, within tolerances. So let's pop it on the layout and see if we have any issues. So here we are, ready for a quick lap of the layout. And it's on the upline, so it will go down on the inside track of the helix and then up on the outside of the other helix. So what do we need? Well, we need lights and we need sound. And we want speed step 50. And then off she should go on her jolly way. And as improbable as it might sound, it's running perfectly. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. There's a wheel off. Now, I filmed it on my phone, and if you keep an eye on the right-hand side, it derails at that helix join. And there it is, it's off. Very difficult to see. So I then reshot it in slow motion. And then hopefully you can see as it comes into view, and there goes the front wheel, and it rocks on the center axle of the bogie. That is, that the front axle is down and the rear axle is up. So what's actually happening here? Well, on my two helix, I've found two hot spots, one on each helix, and as I've shown you the second one, which is easier to video. And on a layout, you can have a vertical curve. That's a piece of track, not unlike this one here, where it goes down, vertical curve. But if you have a vertical curve on a curve, it means more problems. And what's happening is as the vertical curve on the helix, let's say, so you go from one section of the helix to the next, and it's not dead flat, or obviously it will be at an angle, but the two bits might be at a slight angle to each other, then this vertical curve here will allow the front bogie to lift off. And of course, it's at that junction where I've joined the pieces of set track together, which exacerbates it. It's not the end of the world, and it's not necessarily a defect on behalf of Accurascale's part. But why don't we see this with our Helgian locos or whatever? Well, a lot of Coco locos, the center axle of the bogie isn't powered; it floats. And if you've got a floating axle, then you won't get this issue, because what happens on the vertical curve is the front axle stays on the rails. So the middle axle stays on the rails, the front axle comes away to one side, to the outside of the track, and the rear axle comes to the inside of the track, and therefore it rocks, and that's what's happening. So it's just a case of getting back to that helix and just adjusting the levels marginally to make sure that you do away with that vertical curve on a curve. Blimey. But what I have got with me is another Class 37 that a friend of mine has lent me so I can test his to make sure that this issue is a helix issue, let's say, rather than an Accurascale issue. So we'll run his 37 and check it out. So here is Lance's Class 37. I'd play the sound normally, but well, that's a subject we'll come back to in just a moment. Anyway, I'll switch this back to slow motion and see if we have the same issue. Well, clearly we do, but I haven't been able to film the exact moment that it derails. Now, it's also worth mentioning that I do own Bachmann Class 37s and 47s, so why don't I get those issues on the helix of it derailing? Well, I imagine that those tolerances are perhaps a little less tight, or that the Accurascale tolerances are that much finer. But it clearly is an Accurascale 37 issue, not a Coco loco with all the axles that are driven. Otherwise my 37s and 47s from Bachmann wouldn't go around it. But there we go. Right, turning the clock back, where I first mentioned returning the first loco because it was slowing down and stopping when it ran a curve. Now, time has moved on from then clearly, and I don't believe it's anything to do with going around a curve. I think what was actually happening is the loco was charging up its capacitors and doing all its stuff in its decoder and all this blah, and as it sped off and it happened to go round a curve, the decoder probably, what should we say, was kind of getting a bit overheating or whatever, turned off, and the capacitors then drove it on until it ran out of juice. Now I think that's what was happening, because that takes us on then to decoder issues with the Class 37. I can't think of another reason why it would just sort of go 2 or 3 meters and then stop, and it's just purely coincidental that I was driving it down the Helix or around the bend that's behind me. So I don't think it's anything to do with bends in hindsight. It's to do with the ESU Locksound version 5 decoder in this loco. Right, back to Lance's loco. Well, here we have Lance's second Class 37. His first one went back to Hatton's from where he purchased it because there was a sound function issue with it. It was cutting in and so on and so forth. And not unlike my first loco, although you didn't see that, I didn't film it, it was cutting in and out before I had the shutdown issue. So he sent it back to Hatton's, and quite rightly so, they replaced it with this model. The problem still remained. He contacted Hatton's, had a conversation with them, and they suggested that he adjust CV63, which is the master volume CV, down to 150. Why would you do this? Well, I imagine it will put less pressure on the amplifier within the DCC decoder. Anyway, a few weeks later, it packed up. The sound aspect of this decoder no longer works. Now, yesterday I popped around and saw Lance with my 37. We took out both decoders, swapped them over, and obviously mine did work in his loco and his sound didn't work in my loco, if that makes sort of sense. So it's proven that it is the decoder on his that has failed. It's just a sound aspect, everything else seems to work fine. When you send it on its way, it takes its time to go, as if it's waiting for the sound files to sort of click in, the startup sequences and so on. Now Lance has been back onto Hatton's, having weathered this loco. This is where it gets more interesting. Here's a couple of emails. I'm fast coming to the conclusion that Accurascale have not mastered the chip/electronics on their loco products. As you can see, you have already supplied a replacement Class 37. Your records might show that the replacement has recently given me problems regarding the sound feature. Your colleague suggested a fix. I did as you suggested and changed the CV to 150. This seems to have remedied the problem until today. I started the loco up, switched on sound, which worked as expected. I waited 10 seconds or so to allow the stay alive to load and then move the loco forward. Everything working fine for about 6 laps of my circuit, then the sound stopped working and I can't get it to work again. I have removed from test track, reset Z21 and tried, no sound, my other loco's working fine. I feel it's time to reluctantly ask for a refund, which is bad news for me as I have fitted a Model U driver and done a very nice weathering job, which I love. However, I'm very concerned that when the warranty expires, it's only a matter of time before I get more problems, which will be mine to correct and pay for. I might also mention that I'm on my second Class 92, which I bought direct. This also has problems and has stopped moving altogether. I await your comments. Kind regards, Lance. I imagine you know what's coming next. Good morning, Lance. Thank you for contacting us. I am sorry to hear that your Accurascale model is still faulty even after attempting the CV reset. As you have weathered the model, we are unable to accept it back for a refund. Items should be returned to us in the condition they were received. Please see our returns policy on this link. Thank you once again, and please do get back to us if we can further assist. Warranty, kind regards. So Lance is kind of stuffed really at the end of the day. He can't get his money back from Hatton's. He has a Duff loco, well not Duff loco, but he has a Duff decoder, so he's wasted, I don't know, 110 quid or whatever. But how does it sit with Hatton's? Well, I kind of thought about this for the last few days. Now if I went and bought myself some shiny new white Tesla and then painted it purple and then the electric motors fell out and I went back to Tesla, they're not going to say, I'm sorry Charlie, but you've painted it purple and we're not going to fix it, we totally refuse. They would do it. And clearly Hattons don't take that approach, because they've obviously written into their terms of conditions of service or whatever that if you muck around with it, you paint it or you stick people in, then they're going to wash their hands of you. And I honestly think that that's unfair, and I'd like your views on this, so you know where the comment section is, so please put it down there. Moving away from Hattons behaviour, let's say, let's go back now to the Accurascale model itself and the Lock Sound version 5 decoder. Right, now Accurascale have kind of let everyone know to change CV63, the master volume CV, from whatever it was, because mine came set at 150, but if it came at 255 or whatever, to change it to 150. Now that will obviously reduce the volume. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, it appears that their speaker setup, that's the Sugar Cube and the Accura Thrash, are actually wired in parallel rather than in series. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the impedance in the circuit is probably around about 2 ohms rather than the 4 to 8 ohms that's recommended by ESU. So how does that work then? Well, because if you have the volume turned up full, then you're going to overstress the amplifier in the chip and you could blow it. So therefore, if you reduce the overall volume, CV63 down to 150, you're putting less pressure on the amplifier. But you're kind of making modifications to get around a mistake, aren't you? So what other options do you have? Well, if you're so inclined, you could remove the Sugar Cube speaker. Therefore, you're then left with one 4 ohm speaker and you can turn the volume back up. But what do you lose? Well, from the Sugar Cube speaker, you will obviously lose the more treble, the higher frequencies of the sound file. So that's kind of not the ideal way of doing it. But unless you want to go in there and rewire the configuration so that the 2 speakers are in series rather than parallel, I can't see what your options are. There is no doubt in my mind people from Accurascale will watch this video, and I would appreciate you getting in contact with me directly or leaving a comment, leaving a message in the comments section on the best way ahead on these with this issue. Furthermore, I'll also ask Accurascale, what are we to do about Lance's loco? Because fundamentally, this isn't Lance's fault that this chip has gone wrong. I mean, you would normally, if we had bought this decoder from, let's say, Southwest Digital with the 37 sound file installed, and it went wrong, we would just send it back to Southwest Digital and they would refund it. But of course, because it's a Hattons issue, let's say, we're getting nowhere. So these are the kind of things that are bubbling over in my mind with this Class 37. In summary, the Class 37 is a remarkable piece of engineering. From the outside of it, it looks lovely, it performs very well. It does not like vertical curves, especially if they're in a curve, whereas my old Bachmann 37s and 47 don't seem to mind, because they haven't got that center floating axle on a Coco Loco, then it's just an issue. But it is a nice looking piece of kit. However, if you're into sound files and an ESU chips, then clearly there is an issue with this setup. So there we go. What a mouthful that lot was. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that video. Something different, wasn't it? And if you have, then don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, then there's the old button to become one. And I'm trying to become the first pensioner to get to 100,000 subscribers. Don't let me down. There's the old button if you want to help support the channel by becoming a patron, and a video here and here. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.